I've had some names on my mind all week, and I want to share these names. These names have been rattling around in my head all week, and I've been trying to make sense of them. So it goes like Jared Goff, Jimmy Garoppolo, Joe Flacco, Rex Grossman, former Bears quarterback, Nick Foles, and Jake Delhomme, a former Carolina Panthers quarterback. What do they all have in common? They all are quarterbacks who have played in or won a Super Bowl. And by the way, none of them are all-time great quarterbacks. I mean, Joe Flacco might be the best quarterback in the bunch. He's got the most passing yards. But I wouldn't consider Joe Flacco an all-time great quarterback. He got benched for Lamar Jackson. He lost his spot. Now he might even be out of the league next year. Jimmy Garoppolo went to a Super Bowl 2 years ago. Looks like the 49ers are trying to replace him. Jared Goff got replaced in L.A. And so what does this mean to have quarterbacks who are not all-time greats that have won a Super Bowl or gone to a Super Bowl? And then what does it mean about the quarterbacks who are considered all-time greats who haven't ever won a Super Bowl? Dan Marino, Dan Fouts, Phillip Rivers. I'm trying to think of another name. I had one earlier. I don't. There's many quarterbacks out there we go like, that's an all-time great quarterback. Oh, but they didn't win the big game. There's no Super Bowl with that name. What do you do with those guys? How do you make sense of that? And first off, I would say that there's a big difference between Tony Romo is the name I'm thinking of. I think Tony Romo is an all-time great quarterback who never won the big game. And I know I'm the only person maybe who thinks Tony Romo is an all-time great, but go look at the stuff he did in Dallas, man. I know the Cowboys lost a lot of games, but he's the reason why he made them close and the reason why they were in a lot of those games. So I would say there's a difference between going to a Super Bowl like Rex Grossman did and actually winning a Super Bowl. So Rex Grossman got to a Super Bowl with Chicago, but he had a great team, an incredible defense, Devin Hester, a good coach. Like, he kind of got carried to a Super Bowl. And the obvious reality is you look around like all these quarterbacks who've won Super Bowls who are not all-time great quarterbacks. Well, the takeaway has got to be you need a great team to get to and win a Super Bowl. But then what does that mean about a guy like Tom Brady who's won Super Bowl after Super Bowl after Super Bowl? Or what about Drew Brees is an all-time great quarterback. He won a Super Bowl, but does he, and we're going to always say like, well, Drew Brees won a Super Bowl. So that elevates his legacy long-term. But we probably give quarterbacks too much credit. I mean, it's whether I still think they deserve a lot of the credit. We maybe give them 20% too much credit. I would probably still leave a lot more than other people would. But it's interesting that part of how we measure a quarterback's greatness is with championships and Super Bowls. And yet, quarterbacks who are not great all time have won that big game that we value so heavily, so much. And if an all-time great quarterback wins a Super Bowl, if in order to be an all-time great quarterback, you have to win a Super Bowl, then what do you do with that pile of guys like Nick Foles and Joe Flacco, guys who are, I would just not consider an all-time great? And then also, remember, take notice that in 2020, Deshaun Watson taught us that you can play like an MVP-level quarterback, do incredible stuff, put up great numbers, make great decisions, do everything right. But if your team is awful, it doesn't matter, right? Deshaun Watson and the Houston Texans went 4-12 this year. It was terrible. So what do we say about sharing responsibility and who gets the credit and what factors really do lead to a Super Bowl? I think there are three really important things that lead to a Super Bowl. You have a team, a coach, and a quarterback. Roster, coach, quarterback. And to win a Super Bowl, you need two goods and a great. Two of those things need to be good, and one of those things needs to be great at the minimum. And so we'll say that, and to make it clear, the way I'll explain this is that great is 3 points, good is 2 points, okay is 1 point, and below average is 0 points. So that way, if you have a mix of, I'm trying to think, 2 greats and an okay, that still gives you 7 points. It's equivalent to having 2 goods and a great. So when you do the math, you need 7 points to win a Super Bowl at least. 2 goods and a great, or an okay and 2 greats. Does that make sense? I think it does. To me, it makes sense. I'll explain it more. The Chicago Bears in 2006 lost the Super Bowl. They had a great team. That's 3 points. They had Devin Hester, an amazing defense, Brian Urlacher, like great players all over the field. They had a good coach, Lovie Smith. That's 2 points, so that's 5 total. And I think Lovie Smith being a good coach is, he's good. It's generous, but he's good. He failed in college, but I won't hold it against him. However, their quarterback, Rex Grossman, was below average. So that's a great team, 3 points. Good coach, 2 points. Bad quarterback, 0 points. So they had 5 total points. They need 7 to win a Super Bowl. They have a good, a great, and below average. You need 2 goods and a great to win a Super Bowl. You need 7 total accumulative points of between the roster, the coach, and the quarterback. And in 2019, the 49ers, they had great team. I mean, players everywhere. They had head coach Kyle Shanahan. Well, they have a below average quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo did not play well in that Super Bowl. The 49ers, in fact, a year later now, were looking to replace Jimmy Garoppolo. And they lost that Super Bowl. They didn't have a good quarterback. They had a great team, great coach, 6 points, almost there, but a below average quarterback. And Joe Flacco had a great team and a great coach. So even if Joe Flacco was a okay quarterback, 1 point, he still had 6 points between, great coach, great quarterback. I hope that makes sense to you guys. I know the math is probably confusing people, but great team, great coach, okay quarterback, that still can win a Super Bowl cumulatively. And so the 2017 Eagles, I think, are where this really hits a hard spot. Okay, you have got a great roster, a great team, good players everywhere. Doug Peterson's just fired. I don't feel comfortable calling Doug Peterson a great coach. I think he's a good coach. I know that's controversial to some. I think he shouldn't have been fired. We can debate that all you want. But their quarterback was Nick Foles. So you have great team, good coach, but do you have a second good? You have 5 points total. Great, good. Do you have a good quarterback? I think I would argue that probably in his career total, Nick Foles was just an okay quarterback. But in that playoff run with Philadelphia, I don't know how you look at that Philadelphia Super Bowl run and go, the quarterback they had for those couple games was a great quarterback. So I'm bending the rules. It feels weird, but we'll say, hey, they had a great roster, good coach, and a good quarterback. And then maybe you could even argue that Doug Peterson must be a great coach if he was able to get a Super Bowl out of Nick Foles. So how do you win multiple Super Bowls? That's the next question. So you can do it once with Nick Foles, but the difference between Nick Foles and Peyton Manning is Peyton Manning did it again later in his career. And to go to multiple Super Bowls, you need 2 greats. Coach, quarterback, team. For example, the Dallas Cowboys had 3 greats. They won 3 Super Bowls with quarterback Troy Aikman. They had great coach, great team, and a great quarterback. Jimmy Johnson, the head coach. Emmitt Smith, running back. Michael Irvin, a bunch of other great players. They had Troy Aikman. They had great team, great quarterback, great coach. Even when Jimmy Johnson left and they had a new coach, they still had a great team, great quarterback. So even with just an okay, good coach, they were able to make it happen. They got another Super Bowl even without their great coach. So you need 2 greats to win multiple Super Bowls. And I really think people don't understand the difference between winning a Super Bowl one time and then doing it multiple times. How much harder it is to do it again, to win multiple Super Bowls. I'd compare it to a road trip where winning a singular Super Bowl is like it's like a road trip from Seattle to Los Angeles. Straight down the West Coast, it's 1,135 miles. It's a big road trip. I've done it. It's 16 hours. I drove it. I took a nap, but I drove. It took me 18 hours to go from Seattle to Portland. I guess I went from Portland to LA, but it took me 18 hours to do that with a nap in between. It's a long drive. It's like, wow, you went down the whole West Coast. It's impressive. But that's just going to a Super Bowl. Now, winning a Super Bowl is a much more impressive feat, in my opinion. That's like Seattle to New York. That's 2,852 miles over 3 days of driving, probably 3.5 days roughly, if you're really pushing it to 12, 11 hours. So it can be done. You can go from Seattle to New York driving. But it's a hard, long road trip, and it's impressive. And you're probably not going to do it again. I don't know very many people that go, wow, wasn't that so fun driving across the country from Seattle to New York? Let's do it again. Most people don't do it again. You only do it one time in your life, and you go, it was good. Hard to do it again. Now, winning multiple Super Bowls. So if winning a Super Bowl is driving from Seattle to New York, doing it a second time or a third time, that's equivalent to going to the moon. Nobody does that. So few quarterbacks have done that. It's really impressive. You look at here's a list of guys who've won even 2 Super Bowls. You go, that's crazy. That's not very many guys. And I cannot name a single quarterback who won more than 1 Super Bowl who's not in the Hall of Fame or eventually will be in the Hall of Fame. Like Big Ben isn't in the Hall of Fame, but he's still playing, right? Tom Brady's not in the Hall of Fame yet, but he's still playing. At some point, we know if you win a second Super Bowl, we pretty much all acknowledge that makes you a Hall of Fame quarterback. That's how it works. Again, Nick Foles won a Super Bowl 1 time. Kind of right place, right time, played great, finished really strong. But it's not going to happen again for Nick Foles. It's not going to happen again for Joe Flacco. That's the difference between Joe Flacco, Nick Foles, and Tom Brady. It's so much harder to do it a second time. It's an even greater accomplishment. But there is one more thing I haven't talked about. I've kind of waited to say this. We've talked about good, we've talked about great, we've talked about winning multiple Super Bowls, and really the question remains, what about the words dynasty and elite? Like, how do you define the New England Patriots? Because nobody else does what they did. Bill Belichick and Tom Brady combined, they went to 9 Super Bowls together. And that's what happens when you pair an elite coach and an elite quarterback. You go to 9 Super Bowls, you win 6 of them. When you have an elite coach and elite quarterback, the most rare of rare things. Sometimes you get an elite quarterback, sometimes you get an elite coach. You rarely get them together. When you get them together, oh man, special, incredible things happen. And part of what made Bill Belichick elite is he was actually building their rosters. You can say, it didn't work. Bill Belichick won 6 Super Bowls. He built that roster 6 times good enough to win a Super Bowl. And if winning a Super Bowl 1 time is driving from New York to Seattle, winning a second Super Bowl is like going to the moon, then winning 6 Super Bowls, going to 9 is equivalent to going to Mars. Nobody's done it. Nobody will ever do it again. It's incredible. It's unbelievable what Bill Belichick and Tom Brady did together. Now we have Tom Brady without Bill Belichick at a 10th Super Bowl. I think that's got to be a record, I would imagine. And nobody's ever going to do what he's done again. It's incredible how many he's been to. It's an ongoing joke. Can you believe Tom Brady is back again? But to me, that's the word elite. That's when you have an elite quarterback. That's the kind of guy who goes over and over and over again and keeps going back and keeps getting back to the well. And when you pair an elite quarterback with an elite coach, you get the rare, unbelievable feat like a unicorn or going to Mars, something that never happens, which is complete dominance by the New England Patriots in the NFL. That's how I would define all that. That's a very nerdy segment, not for everybody. I know that. But I've just been going how do we measure greatness with Super Bowls a lot of the time? Then how does Nick Foles and Joe Flacco fit in? What about guys that get to Super Bowls like Rex Grossman and Jared Goff? And then how do we explain away? Logically, how do we explain this? And then really, is it a knock against Tom Brady? If it really does matter, you got to have a great team. If a great team can carry Rex Grossman, then could a great team carry Tom Brady to a Super Bowl? I guess probably, but probably not 10 different times. So that is how I would define all that. If anybody cares, I know maybe I'm alone. I'm the only person that thinks about this stuff at night. But I've been really struggling. How do you define? How do you make sense of Jared Goff and Jimmy Garoppolo? And I've been just thinking about this stuff for a week now. And this is what I came up with. And maybe you love it. Maybe you hate it. Maybe you're angry at me. I don't really care. I just try to make an interesting show, and I found this very nerdy and interesting, and so